The top stories: government agencies ramp up preparations for humanitarian aid in Tigray. And diaspora extends hands to facilitate virtual teaching across the nation. Greetings, dear viewers. Welcome to Addis News Hour with the news. I'm Shifarao Lakaw, and thank you for joining us. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ethiopia disclosed that various Ethiopian government institutions are gearing up to facilitate humanitarian supplies in the Tigray region. According to a statement issued today, the discussion specifically focused on ways of expediting the delivery of humanitarian supplies to the Tigray region in the areas under the control of the federal government of Ethiopia. The discussion was chaired by Ambassador Redwan Hussein, National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister. Representatives from National Intelligence and Security Service, Ethiopian Federal Police, Ethiopian National Defense Force, Ethiopian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Disaster Prevention and Preparedness Commission attended the meeting. Ethiopian Ambassador to the U.S. Seleshi Bakala and State Minister for Finance Eyob Tekalin discussed with more than 50 American investors current situations in the country. Ambassador Seleshi briefed the investors on the impact of the termination of Ethiopia's eligibility to AGOA on ordinary citizens. The cancellation has deprived thousands of women in Ethiopia of jobs, he said. The cancellation is also affecting the long-standing friendship between Ethiopia and the U.S. The ambassador and the state minister called on American companies that have invested in Ethiopia to push for reinstatement of Ethiopia's eligibility to AGOA. Moving on, while the war in the north is escalating because of the intransigence of the TPLF, the government is making the necessary preparations to make sure that humanitarian agencies will get access to the freed parts of the war-torn Tigray. Ethiopia has made it clear that it will recommit to the unfettered flow of humanitarian assistance to the people of Tigray. Kasaun Chane has more on that.
The government of Ethiopia has already disclosed that it will facilitate the unhindered flow of humanitarian aid in areas freed by the National Defense Forces. So far, according to a statement disclosed by the government, the Shire airport and some other areas have fallen under its control. In recent days, the Ethiopian National Defense Force, ANDF, has taken control of some urban areas in the Tigray region. As the statement released by the government communications service indicated, the Ethiopian National Defense Force will endeavor to avoid fighting in urban areas. The maximum care the ANDF has taken thus far has succeeded in protecting civilians from harm. The ANDF has taken control of the towns of Shire, Alamata and Koram without fighting in urban areas. The NDF has tortured a gruesome picture few doomsayers have tired to paint. A coordinated endeavor is afoot to open the North Gondar route to the Shire in addition to the Kombolcha Dese, Waliak Obo, Alamata route. These developments will still contain technical assessments and some of the groundwork needed to fix aid to the conflict-afflicted regions it noted.
Moving on, a member of the Ethiopian parliament says the government has never, even for a fleeting second, strayed from its commitment to peacefully resolving the conflict in the northern part of the country. A representative of the constituency of Woreda Hayarat in Kolfe Qaranio subsidy of Addis Ababa, the MP, Keredin Tazara, told Al Jazeera that the government will remain unwavering in its commitment to peace. He also underscored the international community must have a good grasp of the pretense used by the TPLF to foil the peace efforts. Kushumalisov has more on that.
The Ethiopian government has been expressing its unwavering commitment to negotiate without any precondition with TPLF to resolve the conflict in the northern parts of Ethiopia. However, the outlawed TPLF blown up the much anticipated peace talk, resuming the third round of fresh attack in Amhara and Afar regions. The international community has continued scapegoating the Ethiopian government peace efforts and equating TPLF in contrary with the legitimate government. Talking to Al Jazeera on current affairs of Ethiopia, members of parliament Keredin Tazara said the Ethiopian government has time and again shown its commitment to end the conflict in Tigray region peacefully.
The government is, I think, according to my understanding, very committed enough to resolve the conflict in the north. Through political means, through dialogue, through AU peace brokered process, and right even before on August 24, it was the war was reignited by the TPLF side. Then it is very much committed. It was the TPLF side expanded into the Amhara and Afar regions. Then it should defend its land. It should defend the territory of the territorial integrity of Ethiopia. So while it's just conducting and defending the territorial position, still the government is very open enough for peace dialogue to end the process.
He explained that the international community must understand the reality and acknowledge government's peace initiative efforts rather than blaming Ethiopia.
We are now hearing from the international community, so-called international community, and we are hearing from the TPLF side. For me, this kind of making the war internationalism motivated through it's a kind of politically motivated than what is going on the ground.
He also highlighted that the international community should understand the Ethiopian government has constitutional mandate to manage not only Tigray but the whole Ethiopia to ensure the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the nation.
The government should control every part of Ethiopia, let alone, Ethiopian government is destined to control the territorial boundary of Ethiopia, right from the northern part of Ethiopia, the east and the south and the north. That is up to the government responsibility. Shire and other parts of Tigray are still part of Ethiopia. So we are now the Ethiopian government is advancing into the different parts of Tigray, not to attack one or another society, rather to make sure that Ethiopian sovereignty is very secured by its forces.
The government, in cooperation with humanitarian operators, is making preparations to bring safe routes which humanitarian assistance could be transported.
Now, it's been close to 2 years since the terrorist TPLF plunged Ethiopia into a protracted war by assaulting a federal army camp. By reversing the terrorist group's attack on the people of Ethiopia, the Ethiopian National Defense Force is controlling some areas in Tigray region and is creating favorable conditions for humanitarian aid. But the terrorist leaders remain dogged in their futile attempt to hoodwink the world into believing that Tigray is being invaded by a federal army, while they are still forcing Tigrayans to fight and die in a senseless war. Johannes Fantaun has more on that.
It can be proven that even after 27 years of controlling the power in Ethiopia, TPLF, who started its struggle to liberate the people of Tigray, still calls itself a liberator. To this day is not one established to liberate the people of Tigray. The belligerent TPLF, which has been defrauding the people of Tigray for more than 40 years, has declared war on the people it claimed to liberate and has left the people in an unimaginable dark journey in the 21st century. The mother of Tigray is being forced to give her children for war. The father of Tigray is faced with the bitter truth of giving his sons and daughters to war, whether willingly or forcefully. Today, it's impossible to see young children in the streets of Tigray, in the universities of Tigray, or at any level of education. They all have been forced to the army. In battle, the lucky ones were able to save their lives by surrendering their hands to the Ethiopian Defense Army, while the unlucky ones were not able to turn back due to the bullets fired from the front. The international community's concern is not the safety of the people of Tigray, but the survival of the terrorist group TPLF. When some European countries and US politicians think of an obedient and executive group for their political needs around the Horn of Africa and Red Sea, the first thing that comes to them is that they are in a big trouble because the time to TPLF's end is approaching. From the United Nations, which claims to be an international institution, to humanitarian organizations, are not accepting the bitter truth that the rebel group is being defeated by the Ethiopian army. A year ago, when the terrorist group passed through the Afar and Amhara regions and thought they were approaching Addis Ababa, these elements were in a high spirit. Institutions that were silent when the humanitarian aid materials, from fuel to the nutritious food needs for children, were looted by the TPLF soldiers, today continued their usual cries that humanitarian aid has been cut off. They said nothing about the federal government's announcement that it has prepared 2 corridors for humanitarian aid since it started to control some areas of Tigray. These institutions, which entered Ethiopia in the name of humanitarian aid, have confirmed by their actions that their purpose is backing TPLF to Addis Ababa and not to support the needy people of Tigray. The terrorist group has realized that the end has come today, so it is still marching the people of Tigray and using it as a shield in the battlefield. Knowing that this alone will not help, the group is hiring international lobbyists as well as using its Western masters. Now the time has come for the government of Ethiopia to withstand all these international pressures and turn its face completely towards development.
You're still watching Addis News Hour, and thank you so much for being with us. And moving on, following the Great Diaspora Homecoming Challenge back in January 2022, spearheaded by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, a number of Ethiopian diasporas and Ethiopian nationals took the initiative to come back home to contribute a great deal to their motherland. One such Ethiopian who came up with Brighter Generation virtual teaching pilot program is Saga Solomon, a medical doctor, who told ETV that the initiative will create connection between students and diaspora through different regions of Ethiopia when it reaches maturity stage. Tekisanesa reports.
Brighter Generation is a program that aims to enhance education and empower the next generation of leaders in Ethiopia by connecting the diaspora with students and teachers in Ethiopia. Dr. Saga Solomon, who is a health professional, sat with ETV and told that this program came to being by couples who paid a visit right after the Great Diaspora Homecoming Challenge back on January 7, 2022, spearheaded by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed.
So this idea came actually when my husband and I were visiting Ethiopia last year in January when there was Ethiopian homecoming. We had an opportunity to visit our country. Other times it was to visit family, friends, or vacation, but this time it was just to see the well-being of our country and to support our people. And during that time we had opportunities to travel to different parts of Ethiopia, including Debre Birhan, Shoarobit, Gondar and such, and we saw that we wanted to contribute to Ethiopia in a real way that can impact the community and the society, not just the ones in Addis Ababa, but all sorts of regions in Ethiopia. And so since we come from very professional and education background, we felt that education is a way that we can help our country and make the next generation ready to lift Ethiopia and carry Ethiopia forward. And so that's how it came about.
Tsagga underscored that while in search of some convenient platform to help Ethiopia, this Brighter Generation virtual teaching platform came to reality.
And another thing is that the diaspora during that time really wanted to be part of Ethiopia's advancement, change, prosperity and success. And but there isn't that many type of direct platforms to carry out such type of service. So we thought of a platform that allows professional diaspora around the world to be able to connect to Ethiopia and contribute in a real way. And specifically, we decided that in this project, it would be through education.
She further stated that when this very pilot program reached its final maturity stage, it's planned to be as inclusive as possible through different regions of Ethiopia.
So this was a pilot project. We wanted to be as inclusive as possible of different regions of Ethiopia, but we successfully were able to include 5 regions of Ethiopia. But our hope is to include actually all regions of Ethiopia, different cities within each regions of Ethiopia, to be part of this expansion program. So now it's been a pilot program to sort of see how this works. Is it possible to virtually, for the diaspora to virtually teach high school students in Ethiopia? Particularly this program is for 9th and 10th grade students. And once we've shown that, yes, you can successfully do this and have a huge impact on the students, now how do we expand it? Reach, we have 9 centers right now where we taught this course, and our goal is to expand it to 50 or more by the next phase. So it goes from being pilot program to actually an expanded program.
Moving on, the Finance Minister Ahmed Shide has met with the UK Minister for Development Vicky Ford. According to Ethiopian Embassy in the US, the two discussed latest developments in Ethiopia in the economic and political sphere. Ahmed highlighted the role of international financial institutions, government and development partners tackling the bottlenecks hindering the implementation of the reform program in Ethiopia. Vicky, for her part, acclaimed the reform being carried out by the government of Ethiopia, pledging UK's continued support for Ethiopia's development aspirations. The U.S. Embassy in Addis Ababa funded a grant implemented by Radio Netherlands Worldwide Media RNW and the Center for Advancement of Rights and Democracy CARD for a series of media training workshops. This week, the facilitators were joined in Bardar by representatives of the U.S. Embassy Public Affairs section for one of the sessions. 40 journalists participated from various institutions in a 3-day media training facilitated by experienced Ethiopian journalists and media educators. Topics covered included understanding and identifying disinformation, fact-checking, the role of journalism and media and democracy in social media, content creation. Moving on, Josep Borrell's racist remark at EU Ambassadors Conference on the 10th of October 2022 is denounced by many political leaders and called to resign. In his remark at the new European Diplomatic Academy in Belgium, which have been widely circulated online, Borrell called Europe a garden and most of the world is a jungle that could invade the garden. Shagamato has the following report.
Josep Borrell, who is a Spaniard, works as EU Foreign Affairs Chief Vice President of EU Commission since 1st December 2019. In his remarks at the European Diplomatic Academy in Bruges, Belgium, which have been widely circulated online, Borrell called Europe a garden and most of the world as a jungle that could invade the garden.
Europe is a garden. We have built a garden. The rest of the world, and you know very well, Federica, is not exactly a garden. The rest of the world, most of the rest of the world is a jungle. And the jungle could invade the garden. And the gardeners should take care of it. The jungle has a strong growth capacity, and the wall will never be high enough in order to protect the garden. The gardeners has to go to the jungle.
Many political leaders are denouncing his remark that reveals the appalling racist and colonial mindset that permits even the highest levels of European political leadership. Mark Botenga, European Parliament member, said his remark depicted that Europe is still driven by neocolonialism mentality.
What's the difference between a garden and a jungle? A garden's a nice place where civilized human beings walk around. A jungle is the heart of darkness, where wild animals live. Now, many people in Africa, Asia, Latin America remember very well how, in the name of civilization, European colonialism treated them like wild animals, enslaving them, torturing them, and even exhibiting them in human zoos. Therefore, when the highest diplomat of the European Union compares Europe to a garden, but especially the rest of the world to a jungle, the message these people hear is that Europe is still driven by neocolonialism. We cannot let that message pass.
The European Union's foreign policy chief Josep Borrell denied that comments he made last week were racist and apologized for any offense caused by the remarks that had prompted criticism from the United Arab Emirates. The United Arab Emirates summoned the acting head of the mission at the EU delegation to the United Arab Emirates, asking for explanation of what he said were racist comments made by Borrell. In a blog post published, Borrell said his reference to a jungle referred to increasing examples of countries using force, intimidation and blackmail behavior at odds with agreed international norms.
And now moving to business, Ethiopia has successfully promoted its specialty coffee at the SCAG World Specialty Coffee Conference and Exhibition 2022 hosted in Tokyo, Japan. Ethiopian ambassador to Japan, Tafarra Darabo, said Ethiopia as a leading coffee exporter will only receive its fair share of export earnings from the sector if it is aggressively promoted to buyers and consumers. And more than 40 Ethiopian coffee exporters, along with the management of the Ethiopian Coffee Association and the Ethiopian Chamber of Sectoral Associations, participated in the event. SCAG World Specialty Coffee Conference and Exhibition, Asia's largest international trade fair dedicated to coffee, is a global annual event that attracts a host of coffee producers, exporters, and importers. And now a quick reminder of the top stories. And government agencies ramp up preparations for humanitarian aid in Tigray. And diaspora extends hands to facilitate virtual teaching across the nation. Well, viewers, I'm going to leave it there.